Okay, so I think, welcome to Mixed Mattaphors, spreading the good news of books, metal, and video games. So I think today is going to be one of the relatively rare episodes that's focusing more on metal. And in this case, I'm going to be focusing on metal, but a subgenre of metal, and then of that subgenre, sort of a tiny, tiny piece. So the tiny, tiny piece, um, and I feel like I plagiarized a little bit of Questy's energy there, so sorry, Questy, for that one. Should you ever see this, but there's a tiny subgenre of, or a tiny portion of a pretty solid little subgenre, maybe a growing one actually, of metal, and I attribute a little of that to. There's another metal YouTuber. He had a video recently like black metal is growing, or like black metal is not evolving. I don't think it was. It was more like, or black metal is back or something. Maybe it said. And anyway, he was talking about how it's really a creative resurgence for black metal, and it seems to really be really like if Bathory or Countess Bathory isn't it kind of like a non-apparent H in that Bathory, but like Bathory and a little bit of Bathory actually they fairly quickly started going a different way, but with Hammerheart and Bloodfire Death, like those were didn't sound that black metal-y. And then their first album, I think I also have their first and second album, and I'm not sure those sound that black metal-y to me. I heard somewhere that the third album is like, oh, the third one's everyone's favorite, and that's like the most black metal one, and I was like, that's one of the ones I don't have. Ah, but Matt, just go listen to it on YouTube. I prefer these days. I prefer to buy an album if I'm going to be listening to it on YouTube. If it's posted by like the artist, or maybe the artist's like record company or something, or maybe like a channel like Black Metal Promotion, which seems to be in some way, I don't know, maybe it's just like good branding, but in some way it seems to be like, or I have taken it as kind of like in with the music, or like in with the artists, and perhaps even like having asked permission from the artists for sharing these full black metal albums. But then there's like Death Metal Supply, and they do a similar thing. Is it really just a semantic difference, and both of them are just essentially like some guy in a house saying, "Hey, I'm uploading more black metal albums to YouTube." I don't know any of these guys, um, but this is just tobacco, by the way. But what? Oh yeah, so he was talking about like this creative resurgence in black metal, and it really does seem like sort of a new era. So the first era was sort of like Bathory and Venom, and it really doesn't sound. It really doesn't sound that. I mean, it doesn't sound that similar to what most people sort of have as their conception of black metal, or at least I think it seems like for a long time was the conception of black metal, which is the second wave of black metal. If the first wave was Bathory and Venom and whoever else, then the second wave, and even like Slayer to some extent with their first album. I love their first album. I remember listening to their first album, and it was the first Slayer album I listened to, and I was just like lying there with my headphones. I had been released from federal detention, or I mean, it wasn't like a federal detention center, but some federal people went there. But I had been released not too long before, and I had got a Slayer CD among other CDs at the store, just maybe earlier that day or something, and I had also gone to Barnes & Noble and bought all these books, and it was like, I'm out, and I'm getting all this, like, these great CDs and books, and I was listening to Show No Mercy, the Slayer album that I got, I don't think it had been that night, because I had been sort of like kind of leery of it, like I bought it, and it's the first one, but the cover was so satanic, like, not like, oh, spooky picture of the devil, like glowing red or something, but like this sort of like naturalistic, like drawing of this like goat man or something, and like in the Slayer logo is like an inverted pentagram with like swords through it, like forming the inverted pentagram, like the satanic pentagram, and it like really, it was like, oh, like I don't know, like I had listened to some metal before then. I mean, I hadn't listened to as much metal then as I have since then, but like I have now, but I'm listening to it all right now. But like nevertheless, like I had listened to like harder stuff than Slayer, or at least harder stuff than Slayer's first album. And I mean, Off to War! I love that song. What is that? War Ensemble? March to War! Or whatever he says. I love the lead singer of Slayer. He's so rappy. Slayer's like kind of rap metal. One might say they invented nu metal, but because I will say Slayer sounds like kind of a different genre from the other big four of thrash metal. And then to some extent, Anthrax sounds a little more like kind of punky, like progressive metal, a little more than, I don't know. And Megadeth has sort of a different feel from a lot of, or most of Metallica's stuff as well, so, but anyway, I was listening to that Slayer album, like I was like, all right, like I'm hesitant, but it wasn't because I wasn't thinking like, oh, it's going to sound really like, really extreme, and it's going to be like auditorially, or it's going to be orally, like, not orally, but orally, AU. It's going to be orally, is AU gold, or is that AG, or FE? No, is that iron? Anyway, who knows? But that black metal, that Slayer album, I remember listening to it and being like, oh, I love this. Like, I was like expecting like a jump scare in a certain sense, and it gave me a hug. Like, and that sounds so satanic and stuff, but like I wasn't like, oh, great, like I actually like them like talking about Satan in some of these songs, which they actually do in that album. Not something that Slayer like usually did, actually, from what I've listened to of them, but yeah, I mean, the album sounded, there was something about the music, like the guitar patterns, that it sounded like they were really like structured, like, or it sounded like all these other people were scribbling, and like Slayer was actually like drawing a picture, like it sounded very intentional and very not just like but like dun 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 dun, like it sounded more like a composition than just sort of guitar playing. And I was like, oh, this is just amazing. It was great. But they're kind of black metal-y in that album, so you could put them in the first wave of black metal in some sense. I don't know, maybe a lot of people do. It's not like I sort of just came up with a connection there on my own, or at least, I don't know, although I will say one thing that I might have come up with on my own, because I'm not sure if I've seen this album or this band maybe, I'm not sure if I've seen them referred to as black metal, but Iapetus, Iapetus, their album, The Body Cosmic, it sounds pretty black metal-y to me. It's I love that phrase too, black metal-y. That's beautiful. It's like not a Mondegreen. It's like cellar door, like the most beautiful words in the English language. But yeah, I mean, the second wave of black metal was, I think the first wave might have been more in Sweden. Well, no, I don't know where Venom was from. I think Bathory might be Swedish. I guess there are Swedish second wavers, the prominent ones, right? But well, and then I will also say some early Amon Amarth sounds black metal-y. A decent amount of a decent amount of Amon Amarth sounds black metal-y, like sort of blackened death metal maybe, which I didn't just make that phrase up by any means. Or maybe blackened, maybe dead black metal, you know? I don't know. But anyway, yeah. But, so the second wave, so the first wave was, I don't even know how I'd describe it. I don't think I've listened to Venom. If I've heard Venom, I don't know if I knew I was listening to Venom. And having not listened to the third Bathory album, at least, I've listened to the first, second, fourth, and fifth, I think, and have all of them. Oh yeah, as I was saying earlier, you know, I like to buy, as I was starting to say, if I listen to an album on YouTube, you know, I like to have bought it, unless, like, again, maybe unless it's on the artist's channel or on the, like, a record company's channel or something that seems, like, kind of legit in some sense, like the black metal promotion channel. But, you know, like, these days, like, I feel like I want to buy the album first, and then, you know, say I don't have it on my phone, but it's on YouTube, I can listen to it, you know, away from where the files are. But in some sense, it feels easier to go that way because I have felt like if I do listen to an album on YouTube, I kind of owe it to the artist to buy the album. And so it's almost like previewing it in that sense. If you're gonna buy it afterwards, if you're gonna buy it in the sense of like, well, I'd like to have it probably, but then B, I listen to it. So if the album is on YouTube, if the artist is putting it out, then it's like, okay, they're putting it out and they're not putting a price tag on it, so they're giving it to you. If the record company is, or maybe even if the artist is, in a sense similar to what I'm about to say, then it might be that sort of the record label is putting it out for free and the artist doesn't want it to be for free or something. I mean, who knows? I imagine that has happened a little bit because a lot of albums are just for free on YouTube. It seems now, actually, it seems like most big albums, like most prominent new releases, are not only put on YouTube soon after they release, but I would say that if you were to look at it even in a stranger light, but this is the case, it seems like most of the time the artists themselves or the labels themselves will be putting the album on YouTube, like giving it away for free on YouTube. Like you can just go on YouTube and listen to it whenever you have an internet connection and are able to access the videos on YouTube, you know? And access that video, I guess. But it's like, you know, it's kind of sad. It's almost like the labels are saying, well, we know that this is going to be on YouTube, so we might as well put it on YouTube and get the listens and be able to sort of guide some of the flow of the traffic there towards actually buying the music and stuff. Or perhaps even B, they sort of feel defeated and they're like, well, we feel like we got to give it away for free now. And, you know, whether that would differ too much from A, I don't know, but they might be sort of looking more sad when they, you know, like appearing to be sadder than they would in category A necessarily. But okay, so but you know, the new wave of black metal is like you could say it's the third wave. Like this seems maybe people will look back on like the maybe sort of some of the 2010s into the 2020s as like the third wave of black metal. Because you had your like less distinct, kind of less original stuff in the 80s, but it was sort of getting towards the kind of like droning, kind of low, maybe fast. When people describe black metal as fast, it seems strange to me, but maybe they are playing fast, and I'm just not even really registering the speed so much as like taking in the atmosphere, but sort of like the almost the buzzing nature of like the instrumentations, and it also being it and it also being like music characterized by vocals that are so-called harsh vocals, but it's sort of the as I've heard it explained by other YouTube videos than this one. Currently, I'm speaking in what may become a YouTube video rather than watching one. Although I guess seeing the stuff on the screen there, maybe I am in some sense watching it, but I'm watching with the sound off because the sound isn't coming through the speakers. It's coming at the other speakers. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, black metal is just, instead of the growling type of stuff that you get more with death metal, like sort of the, it's more like shrieking or like some croaking, like frog croaks. It's funny because it's like sort of shrieking or croaking. That's more like the Immortal or Inquisition stuff. Some of the Immortal stuff, anyway. Check out at the Heart of Winter. Oh, great album. Just if you've never sort of thought about an album feeling like kind of cold, ooh, listen to this. You might be shivering, but it's an awesome album. But it's funny because black metal has the shrieking and the frog croaking, and then death metal has the growling and the pig squealing. But I would say that black metal seems to have sort of, like, that was sort of the central hub of black metal, like the description of like, sort of droning or like buzzing kind of sounds and shrieking and, just like, it's very, a lot of black metal, and I have heard maybe like Farvan say something like, and others, it seems like kind of legit. Some people might say that black metal, like, part of black metal is the transportive, the hypnotic nature of it, or the transporting nature of it, where it feels like you're sort of like ascending to a spiritual realm or something. It's really cool. And so this is going to be my series called Non-Satanic Black Metal Bands. I will highlight a non-satanic black metal band in each video. And in this video, I highlight Minenwerfer, or Minenwerfer. Minenwerfer. I have some German heritage, so one might think that I would have said Minenwerfer perfectly. However, if you caught me 8 years ago, I probably would have been saying Werner Herzog. And then somebody, a boss of mine actually, at one point, or a boss of my boss, like I had a boss and then he was her boss, he pronounced it Werner Herzog, or I think he might have even said Werner Herzog, which is how I tend to pronounce it now, with a Herzog. I think that might be going too far, actually. I think that might not be accurate, but like that might not be the way that one would pronounce it in properly architecture German. But anyway, Minenwerfer. So I heard Minenwerfer on. Oh yeah, but what I was saying about the, like it might be sort of practical to buy albums before you listen to them on YouTube if you're going into it with sort of a conception that you would like to. If you're going to listen to it on YouTube, you would like to buy it as sort of a payment for it and to have it as well after you listen to it on YouTube. And so then it's like, well, the more albums I listen to on YouTube, the higher my bill's getting. Like I should probably buy the album before I listen to it on YouTube, and it also feels like sort of eating a cake before you pay for it, or like, like there's a bakery and like somehow you eat the cake and then you say, oh, I ate that cake, and then you pay for it. It's like, it's stealing and then, paying for what you initially stole. And what I'm referring to is listening to full or even perhaps parts of music albums on YouTube. And as I was saying, often these albums are posted by the artist or the record label themselves. Sometimes they'll be posted by just, sometimes they'll be posted by people who don't seem to be representatives of the music, though. And anyway, it is, it's an album, so it's like, well, you might as well buy the album before you listen to it on YouTube, because then it sort of feels like I'm obligated. It's like, oh, now I have a task that I must accomplish because I've taken this already. It's more of like just an errand to do now. Like, oh, I've got to go on iTunes and buy this Death album, or something like that. But anyway, Minenwerfer, I listened to Alpenpass on Black Metal Promotion, and then eventually I bought the album. It was kind of long after I listened to it, but Minenwerfer is just glorious. It doesn't seem satanic anyway. Minenwerfer generally, it's like, I think it's a one-man black metal project, or maybe it's like two people sometimes, or maybe it's two people always, I don't know. Maybe it's a 16-person orchestra, but he or they are creating this music generally within sort of like a thematic setting of like World War I guess. And it's sort of weird. Like he's a World War I black metal band. He he shrieks about World War I and has like little audio clips that sound like, old German radio propaganda or something on them, or whatever clips they are. And sometimes even like, I think it might have been in a split he had with another black metal band or little project, or named 1914, I think. It's an awesome, the whole thing is awesome, but it's like half of it, some songs are 1914 and some songs are Minenwerfer. It's a split. But that's what they call it, I guess. It is, it's awesome, though. I don't know if it was a 1914 song or a Minenwerfer song on that album, if it was, but there's this song where, like, Minenwerfer, it's like atmospheric black metal, and it's like setting up this like really interesting kind of like epic smoky battlefield feeling, and then suddenly, or like that's sort of maybe what it's been doing, or that seems what Alpenpass is like anyway, but at some point like the music kind of starts getting tighter and it constricts on itself, and you start hearing anyway like reloading of a gun, like you start hearing like guns reloading, like old-fashioned World War I gun models or something, maybe reloading as like the music sort of like goes rhythmically with the gun reloading. It is like, it's one of the most mind-blowing things I've ever heard. It's awesome. Like Minenwerfer sets up such a cinematic scene. It's like it's atmospheric black metal, so that's sort of like black metal where it's less like punishing, like it can sometimes be with other bands, and more kind of ethereal and kind of like like woo, like is like a good example might be the like 30-minute song on Philosophim that basically is just like a 12-second like boop 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 over and over and over again. It um for 30 minutes. It's awesome, but I one time I didn't realize I had just been listening to the music on like a given app on my phone. It was actually this phone. This is the older one. I had been listening to a music on a given app on that other phone, and for some reason, I think I had set it like that intentionally, maybe to transcribe some of my like audio voice memos or whatever, or maybe I had accidentally set it like that, but it turned out that it was like at half speed, or maybe even less than half speed, or like lower than normal speed, and I was listening to this 30-minute song that was just repeating boo 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 for like 30 minutes, but I think it might have been at half speed or less, so I was like, this is really long, like this is really long, and I didn't realize that it was actually, it's like slow, it's a slow rhythm anyway, but it's like, it was extra slow and like extra long because I had been listening to it on slow motion. I was like, oh geez, that's, that is why, it is why this was so long. And yeah. But anyway, that's that's a cool. Oh wait. Oh yeah. Well, anyway, this is not Well, Burzum tends to make atmospheric black metal, and as do some other artists. And Minenwerfer tends to do that. And the albums that I've listened to of Minenwerfer, I think I have 3 of his albums. The newest one, Alpenpass, one of the older ones, and then The Split. So like 3.5 of his albums. When I said 3 before, that was in reference to the full albums that I had of his. In reference intentionally to the full albums as opposed to opposite ones. But anyway, yeah. Minenwerfer is a really good black metal band. If you're looking for black metal, but you're not really looking to hear like lyrics that are just like saying like quite literally like "Hail Satan" and like the satanic majesty of the history, but they're saying it like "Oh, satanic majesty of the history." If you're not really interested in hearing that stuff, then a really, really good pick would be Minenwerfer. It's just like his albums, as far as I've listened to, there tends to be like a tone to them. So Alpenpass had this really sort of clean and kind of like flowing open air on a mountainside, snowy hillside in the mountains, while like you're looking down and like someone might be like coming up, ascending from the clouds underneath your feet to attack you. And then the newer one is like this really dark, like, so the other one is like hectic and there's like wind buffeting you and stuff, but it's very grand and it's very like beautiful and just sort of kind of relaxing black metal, but then there's the newer one I haven't really gotten into it yet that much because I've listened to it maybe like 3 or 4 times, but it's like very dark and it's very grueling. Grueling is a good word for it. It's very discordant and it's very just total darkness and black forever. And it was. And the earlier one I have is harsher and it's more. Actually, let's look that one up. The earlier one I have that's a full album is harsher and more, sort of more agonizing than Alpenpass is. And Alpenpass is my favorite, but it's sort of more agonizing than Alpenpass is and more unpleasant, but it still has like kind of more of the lightness and the, as opposed to the darkness. And it still has some of the kind of like rickety sort of like, I don't know, it's not rickety in a bad way, but sort of like just trim feeling of like some of the
guitars and stuff from Alpen Pass, and